The rhythm of counting bills had replaced the rhythm of her stroke through water 20 years ago. But in her dreams, Sandy Mitchell still felt the perfect synchronization of breath, movement, and speed that had once made her one of the fastest swimmers in the world. Sandy, 67, sat in the fifth row of the Tonight Show studio, her swimmer's posture automatically straight, while her powerful shoulders moved in unconscious swimming motions as she watched the show. The small First National Bank 20 Years Excellence pin on her conservative blazer caught the studio lights as she shifted in her seat. To the hundreds of customers who had conducted their banking with Sandy over 2 decades, she was just another friendly, efficient teller who somehow always moved with unusual grace and had an athlete's disciplined approach to customer service. What they didn't know was that they were being served by a woman who had once been zero point 0.3 seconds away from representing the United States at the Seoul Olympics. What Sandy didn't know was that her story had been quietly circulating among master swimming communities and Olympic history enthusiasts after someone had posted a photo of the bank teller who still holds 3 NCAA records, alongside footage of her 1988 Olympic trials performance that had mesmerized swimming fans for decades. The post had gone viral among swimmers who remembered watching Sandy Mitchell dominate freestyle events in the 1,980s before mysteriously disappearing from competition. Sandy's story had begun in the chlorinated waters of her local YMCA, where her natural speed had been noticed by coaches when she was just 8 years old. Born in Ohio to parents who worked double shifts to support their family, Sandy had shown an instinctive feel for water that coaches described as once-in-a-generation talent. By high school, she was breaking state records and earning a full scholarship to Stanford University, where she'd trained under legendary coach Richard Quick. The training had been all-consuming and exhilarating. Sandy had lived for the 5 a.m. practices, the endless laps that built both speed and endurance, the technical refinements that could shave precious hundreds of seconds off her times. Her specialty was freestyle sprints, the 50 and 100-meter events that required explosive power combined with perfect technique. By her senior year at Stanford, she was ranked 3rd in the world in the 50-meter freestyle and had legitimate hopes of making the 1988 U.S. Olympic team. The 1988 Olympic trials had been the culmination of 15 years of training. Sandy had qualified first in the preliminaries, setting a new American record in the process. In the finals, she'd led for 75 meters of the 100-meter freestyle, within touching distance of her Olympic dream. But in the final 25 meters, a slight adjustment in her stroke, a microcorrection that would have been invisible to spectators, had caused her shoulder to hyperextend. She'd finished 4th by 0.3 of a second, missing the Olympic team by the smallest possible margin. The injury had been diagnosed as a torn rotator cuff that required surgery and 6 months of rehabilitation. By the time Sandy had recovered, the swimming world had moved on to new stars, and at 23, she'd been considered past her prime in a sport that favored teenage phenoms. Unable to secure sponsorship or coaching support for another Olympic cycle, Sandy had made the heartbreaking decision to retire from competitive swimming and find a career that could provide financial stability. The bank job had been temporary work while Sandy figured out what retired Olympic hopefuls do with their lives. But 20 years later, she discovered unexpected satisfaction in helping customers achieve their financial goals, with the same meticulous attention to detail she'd once applied to perfecting her stroke technique. The Tonight Show tickets had been a surprise gift from her bank colleagues. Sandy was retiring next month after 20 years of perfect attendance and exceptional customer service, and her coworkers wanted to honor the woman who had brought an Olympian's work ethic to everyday banking. It was a Friday night taping in August, and Jimmy was in good spirits after interviewing a swimmer who had just returned from the World Championships. During his commercial break interaction with the audience, his attention was drawn to Sandy by her perfect posture and the way she moved with an athlete's unconscious grace. Ma'am, you have incredible posture. Do you have a background in athletics? Sandy straightened with the automatic response of someone who had spent decades being coached on body position. I used to swim competitively, sir, long time ago. Now I work at First National Bank, been there 20 years. A warm murmur went through the nearby audience members. Competitive swimming was serious athleticism, and 20 years of banking service deserved recognition. Competition swimming? What level did you compete at? Sandy's face lit up with memories of her athletic prime. College level, some national competitions. I swam for Stanford University, trained for international meets. It was the most important thing in my life for many years. Stanford has an incredible swimming program. You must have been very talented to swim there. It was an honor to train there. Coach Quick taught me that swimming isn't just about speed, it's about efficiency, technique, mental discipline. Those lessons served me well even after I stopped competing. Jimmy noticed something in Sandy's language, a sophistication about athletic training that suggested she'd competed at elite levels, not just college recreation. Sandy, when you say international meets, what kind of competitions? Sandy paused, as if deciding how much of her past to reveal. Olympic trials, world championship qualifiers, that level. I specialized in freestyle sprints, the 50 and 100-meter events. The mention of Olympic trials caused a ripple through the audience. Olympic trials represented the absolute pinnacle of American swimming. You made it to Olympic trials? Sandy, that's incredible. Only the fastest swimmers in the country even qualify for trials. I was ranked fairly high for a while, came close to making the team for Seoul in 1988. Very close, actually. Jimmy's curiosity exploded. Someone who had come close to making an Olympic team was among the fastest swimmers in the world, not just a college athlete. Jimmy made a decision that would change everything. Sandy, Olympic trials is elite athletics. Would you mind coming down here and telling us more about your swimming career? Sandy looked uncertain. Oh, I don't think people want to hear about old swimming stories. That was a different life. I think, trust me, people definitely want to hear about Olympic level athletics. Come on down. As Sandy made her way to the stage with the fluid movement of someone whose body had been trained for maximum efficiency, her bearing transformed, the confident presence of someone who had once competed against the world's best athletes. When she reached the stage, Jimmy guided her to a comfortable chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy announced, this is Sandra Mitchell. For 20 years, she's been serving customers at First National Bank, but before that, she was one of the fastest swimmers in the world. Sandy, tell us about your Olympic trials experience. Sandy settled into the chair, and when she spoke about swimming, her voice took on the intensity of someone who had dedicated her life to the pursuit of athletic perfection. The 1988 Olympic trials were held in Austin, Texas. I had qualified first in the preliminaries of the 100-meter freestyle with an American record time of 54.23 seconds. In the finals, only the top two finishers would make the Olympic team. The audience was completely quiet, understanding they were hearing about one of swimming's most competitive events. What happened in the finals? Sandy's expression grew more intense, reliving a moment that had defined her life. I led for 75 meters. I was in lane 4, perfect position, exactly where I wanted to be. My stroke felt perfect. My timing was ideal. With 25 meters to go, I was ahead by about 0.2 of a second. So you were going to make the Olympic team? I thought so, but in competitive swimming, races are won and lost in the final meters. Something happened with my stroke in that last 25, a tiny adjustment that cost me my rhythm. I finished 4th by 0.3 of a second. The studio was mesmerized by Sandy's precise recollection of a race that had happened over 30 years ago. 0.3 of a second? That's incredibly close. In swimming, 0.3 might as well be 3 seconds. The difference between making an Olympic team and going home is often measured in hundredths. I was 0.3 seconds away from my dream. Jimmy reached behind his chair and pulled out a tablet loaded with swimming records in Olympic history. Sandy, we did some research before tonight's show. He showed her historical swimming data. According to USA Swimming records, Sandra Mitchell still holds 3 NCAA records from her time at Stanford. Your 50-meter freestyle record of 21.89 seconds stood for 12 years. Sandy looks stunned. My records are still listed? They are, and listen to this from your former Stanford coach, Sandy Mitchell was the most naturally gifted sprinter I ever coached. Her feel for the water was extraordinary, and her competitive drive was unmatched. If not for her injury, she would have been a multiple Olympic medalist. The studio fell silent. The audience was processing that they were meeting someone who had been among the best in the world at her sport. Sandy, what happened after the trials? Did you continue swimming? Sandy's expression grew more somber. I injured my shoulder in that final race, torn rotator cuff that required surgery. By the time I recovered, the next Olympic cycle was underway, and at 23, I was considered too old to restart my career. The sport had moved on. To retired from swimming at 23, had to. Without sponsorship or coaching support, there was no way to continue training at the level required for international competition. I needed a career that could provide financial stability. Jimmy leaned forward. How do you go from being one of the world's fastest swimmers to working at a bank? Sandy smiled for the first time since taking the stage. You apply the same discipline and attention to detail that made you successful in the pool: customer service, accuracy with transactions, building relationships. Those require the same focus and commitment that swimming taught me. Jimmy stood and addressed the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman came within 0.3 of a second of representing the United States in the Olympics, then spent 20 years applying Olympic-level dedication to serving her community through banking. He turned back to Sandy. The swimming community hasn't forgotten you. USA Swimming wants to induct you into their Hall of Fame for your contributions to American swimming, and Stanford wants to retire your jersey number. Sandy's eyes filled with tears. They want to honor me after all these years? They do. And Sandy, there's something else. The U.S. Olympic Training Center wants to offer you a position coaching sprint technique to current Olympic hopefuls. They need someone who understands the mental and physical demands of elite competition. Sandy sat in stunned silence. They want me to coach Olympians? Because, Sandy, just because you didn't get to compete in the Olympics doesn't mean your knowledge and experience aren't valuable. You understand what it takes to reach that level, and that understanding could help the next generation achieve what you came so close to accomplishing. Jimmy had one more surprise. We have someone here who wanted to meet you. From backstage, Katie Ledecky, the most decorated female swimmer in Olympic history, appeared in her Team USA warm-ups. Sandy, Katie said, approaching with obvious respect. I've studied video of your races from the 1980s. Your stroke technique in the sprint events was textbook perfect. Swimming coaches still use footage of your races to teach proper freestyle form. Sandy was openly crying now, overwhelmed by recognition from swimming's current superstar. You've watched my races? Really serious swimmer has. Your 1988 trials performance is considered one of the greatest races in swimming history, even though you didn't win. The way you led for 75 meters against that field showed incredible courage and skill. Jimmy sat back down beside Sandy. Sandy, you've spent 20 years thinking your swimming career ended in disappointment, but what you really did was inspire generations of swimmers who've watched you compete with heart and determination. As they helped Sandy back to her seat, she stopped and looked out at the audience one more time. Thank you, but I want young athletes to know setbacks don't define you and dreams don't have expiration dates. Whether you're chasing Olympic gold or serving customers at a bank, bring the same dedication and integrity to everything you do. The episode that aired became one of the most inspiring Tonight Show segments of the year, sparking conversations about near misses in athletics and the value of applying Olympic-level dedication to any career. Sandy's story inspired several Olympic training programs to recruit former elite athletes as coaches and mentors, recognizing that those who came close to the Olympics often understood the mental aspects of competition better than those who achieved their goals easily. The Sandra Mitchell Swimming Scholarship was established at Stanford to support student athletes who demonstrated exceptional character along with athletic ability. Sandy accepted the coaching position and spent her retirement working with young swimmers, discovering that leaving competition hadn't ended her contribution to the sport. It had prepared her to help others achieve the dreams she'd come so close to realizing herself. At 69, Sandy still swims daily for fitness, still believes that discipline and dedication are transferable to any field, and still carries her Stanford team photo alongside her bank employee ID. A reminder that true champions are defined not by medals won, but by the grace and determination they bring to every challenge, in and out of the water. Because sometimes the most important races aren't the ones you win, but the ones that teach you how to keep swimming toward new goals, applying Olympic level heart to whatever pool life provides.